She said it was just a crush. Then she said they talked. Then the whole truth finally came out. She sat him down and said she was having doubts. 14 years. Every single moment of his life since he was 13 years old had been built around this one person, and she sat across from him and said she did not know what she wanted anymore. And that was just the beginning. Because it turned out that was not even close to the worst thing she was hiding. He had no idea what was actually happening behind the scenes. And neither does anyone watching this right now. So let us go back to the beginning, because this story has so many layers that if you peel them too fast you might not feel the full weight of each one. This man and his wife had been together since they were 13 years old. 13. Think about that for a second. He did not know adult life without her in it. He had never been on a date with anyone else. He had never built a life with anyone else. She was his entire romantic history from the moment that chapter of his life began. Every milestone that most people collect with multiple people over many years, the first real arguments, the first trips, the first quiet mornings of feeling truly known by another person, he experienced all of it with her and only her. They traveled the world together. They built something that most people spend their whole lives looking for. By every outward measure, this looked like one of those rare love stories that actually works out. But there were cracks forming beneath the surface that he did not fully see coming. She had childhood trauma. She was what he described as extremely avoidant, which in relationship terms means that when things got hard she shut down instead of opening up. She did not fight. She disappeared inward, behind a wall he probably could sense but could not scale no matter how hard he tried. And over the past few years their communication had quietly eroded. Not in a dramatic blowout way. In that slow, invisible, suffocating way where you stop really reaching each other and you do not even realize how far apart you have drifted until one day someone says the thing that changes everything. And then December came. She sat him down and told him she was having doubts about their marriage. That she did not know what she wanted anymore. He described it as devastating, and that word does not even scratch the surface of what that moment must have felt like. Imagine having one person at the center of your entire existence for 14 years, and then watching them look at you like they are not sure you are worth staying for. Like they are doing the math on whether you add up. That is not just heartbreak. That is a complete unraveling of your identity. Because when someone has been your whole world that long, you do not just lose them. You lose the version of yourself that only existed inside the story of the two of you. He tried everything. He asked her what was wrong, what she needed, how they could fix it. He probably stayed up too late running through every conversation, every moment, trying to find the thing he missed or the thing he could change. She gave him vague answers. He asked her directly, more than once, whether there was someone else. She told him no. Every single time. No. There is nobody else. And he believed her, because why would she lie about that? Why would the person who had been his entire world for over a decade look him in the eye and lie about something that enormous? Then she told him she needed space. She went to house sit for a friend for 2 weeks. And while he was at home going completely out of his mind, calling her, begging her to come back and talk to him, she was acting like he was a stranger. He described it as feeling like he suddenly meant very little to her. And here is the part that really gets under your skin. She was not just distant. She was describing some kind of personal identity crisis, talking about not knowing who she was, claiming she had no emotional bandwidth left for him. So he was sitting there trying to save a marriage while she was telling him she did not even have the capacity to show up for it. And he had no way of knowing that while she was telling him all of that, she had company. Oh, but it gets worse. Because when she finally came home from those 2 weeks, she immediately planned a trip to Hawaii with a girlfriend to take even more space. So he went from having a wife who was fully present in his life, to having a wife who was telling him she needed space, to watching that wife board a plane to a tropical island while he sat at home alone and confused and completely in the dark about what was actually happening. You could not write this more cruelly if you tried. When she came home from Hawaii, they started couples counseling. But even there she was not really invested. She showed up, but she was not present in any meaningful way, going through the motions of someone who is not ready to be honest in a room where honesty is the entire point. There is something almost worse about that, about someone sitting inside the very process designed to save a marriage and still withholding the one thing that would actually explain everything. And then somewhere around mid-March something shifted and she suddenly decided she wanted to make things work. She started putting in real effort. Things got better. But he could not shake the questions that had been building for months. Something still did not add up. He kept pushing. And eventually she admitted there had been a coworker. A guy she had feelings for. But she insisted nothing happened. She said her feelings for him were just a symptom of the problems in their marriage, and that he had barely influenced her behavior at all. So he spent weeks trying to accept that version of the story. A crush. An emotional thing. Nothing physical. Painful, yes. Devastating in its own way. But survivable. Except the answers kept not adding up. And he kept asking questions. And she kept adjusting the story just slightly. First it was just a crush. Then she admitted they had flirted. And anyone who has ever been lied to in pieces knows exactly how this feels. Every small admission is its own gut punch, and you can feel that there is still something bigger underneath it all. And then finally, she told him. After all the deflecting, all the adjusted versions, all the careful partial admissions, the real story finally came out. And I imagine that the moment she started telling it, something in him already knew it was going to be worse than he had braced for. She told him about the nights at her friend's house. About how when she went to take space, a coworker of theirs had died by suicide. And the man she had feelings for was close friends with this person. So he came over with others to grieve. And then everyone left. And he stayed. And they talked. And that happened again the next night. And on the second night he made moves on her and she said she could not and he left. And then the third night he came back. And she let him sleep on the couch. And then she said he followed her upstairs. And they slept together. She said it only happened once. She took full responsibility. She sobbed. And there is something uniquely disorienting about watching the person who hurt you fall apart in front of you, because part of you wants to comfort them and another part of you is furious that they get to cry while you are the one whose world just ended. And he was beyond devastated. And I want to sit with that word for a moment, because beyond devastated does not fully capture what this is. This is 14 years of trust being dismantled in one conversation. This is realizing that while he was home begging her to come back, leaving voicemails into what felt like empty air, she had been hosting this man in a house, letting him back in night after night, and on the third night crossing the line that cannot be uncrossed. Every phone call he made to her during those 2 weeks suddenly had a different backdrop behind it. Every reassurance she gave him existed inside a lie she was already living. Let me say something here that I think needs to be said plainly. She did not make one mistake in a moment of weakness. She made a series of deliberate choices over 3 consecutive nights. Night 1, he came over. Night 2, he made a move, she declined, but she let him come back. Night 3, she offered him the couch and then they ended up in her bed. That is not one lapse in judgment. That is a decision made repeatedly with increasing clarity. And then she came home. And looked her husband in the eye. And lied to him about all of it. 4 months. She sat across from him and let him spiral and plead and grieve while holding the answer he was looking for right behind her teeth. That is not a lapse. That is a sustained performance. He started digging. He told her he wanted everything, any detail she had left out, and he let her know he had ways to verify the timeline. He mentioned journals, phone records, and even bluffed about a polygraph appointment. He was willing to do whatever it took to stop living inside a version of events that did not feel true. And she broke down. The walls finally came down. And she let him read her journal. The journal was gut-wrenching, as he put it. Obsessive thoughts about this man. The longing, the infatuation, the spiral of someone who had fallen hard and was trying to process feelings she clearly had not expected. Reading your spouse's private thoughts about someone else is its own particular kind of devastation, a slow burn that forces you to watch the inside of their mind in a moment when it had nothing to do with you. But the journal also corroborated her claim that it was a physical relationship of just 3 days. There were entries about feeling like she meant nothing to him, references to wanting closeness again in a way that read more like longing than like an ongoing situation. And there was a specific mention of wishing they had more time than the 3 days they spent together. Which matched her account. So he was sitting there with a journal full of his wife's obsessive thoughts about another man, trying to decide whether the fact that it was only 3 days made any of it more acceptable. And I think the answer most people would land on is absolutely not. Because the number of times it happened is not really the point. The point is that she chose it. She chose him. She chose to lie. She chose to keep lying. She chose to let her husband beg and plead and fall apart while she protected her secret. She chose every single step of this. He also found a video on her phone of her and this man hanging out at a friend's house at 2 in the morning in March. After it happened. She claimed nothing happened that night. And maybe it did not. But she had still been around him. Still been in proximity to the man she had blown up her marriage for, while her husband sat at home trying to piece himself back together. Here is something that deserves real attention. She did not come clean voluntarily. Not once. She slow-rolled every single piece of truth only when pushed. First it was doubts. Then a crush. Then flirting. Then one time with a coworker. Then the journals. Then the timeline of 3 nights. Every single revelation came only after he pushed hard enough. And that pattern matters enormously when you are trying to figure out whether someone is genuinely remorseful or just sorry they got caught. There was also a detail about a work trip where she stayed in a hotel and he happened to know from her journal that this man was in the very next room. She denied anything happened. And the journal seemed to support that, with an entry about wanting to be with him but not being able to. So maybe nothing happened. But the fact that he had to look for that confirmation in a stolen journal entry rather than get it as an honest answer from his wife says everything about the state of trust in this marriage. Now for the verdict. Because this story demands one. He is not an idiot for still loving her. He is not weak for feeling trapped. 14 years of love does not dissolve because of one revelation, no matter how awful. The attachment is real, the history is real, the pain is real on every level simultaneously. And the fact that he is still asking how to forgive, still looking for a path forward, still trying to understand what happened rather than just detonating everything, says a lot about who he is as a person. He loved deeply and he wants to continue loving. That is not a flaw. That is actually something worth protecting. But here is what he also needs to hear clearly. She did not make one mistake. She made a sustained series of choices over months that included deception, emotional abandonment, physical betrayal, and ongoing dishonesty. She did not confess. She was excavated. Every truth came out only because he kept digging. And even her genuine remorse, her tears, her willingness to sign a post-nup, her offer to share her location, even all of that needs to be weighed against the fact that she still might not have told him everything. Because every layer of this story only appeared when he applied enough pressure to surface it. If they are going to try to rebuild, it cannot be on the foundation of her timeline, her version, her selective truth. He would need full transparency, a real therapeutic process for both of them individually and together, and time. A lot of time. But more than any of that, he needs to decide whether he can live in a marriage where he will always wonder what else she is capable of hiding. Because that question does not go away on its own. And he deserves a life where he does not have to keep asking it. My partner was assaulted after secretly meeting another man, and I don't know how to feel anything anymore. He went to work one morning like any other day. His kid was at daycare. Everything looked normal from the outside. And while he was at his desk, probably answering emails or sitting in a meeting or staring at a screen doing the ordinary invisible labor of a Tuesday, his partner was quietly making her way to a stranger's apartment, a man she had been secretly talking to on Snapchat for days, a man her boyfriend knew absolutely nothing about. And when she came home that day, she said nothing. She looked at him, moved through the same rooms, maybe made dinner or asked about his day or put the baby to bed, and she said nothing. And she said nothing for days after that. Until the lies started cracking open one by one and his entire reality came apart with them. This is a story about a man trying to hold several unbearable things at the same time, and I want to be careful with how I tell it. He and his partner had a child together. 1.5 years old. He described their life as something he believed in deeply. A future. A family. A home being built from the ground up. He loved her. He was not someone looking for an exit or counting problems. He was someone who thought they were on the same page, someone who had made a quiet internal commitment to the version of life they were building together, someone who went to work each day with the assumption that what he was coming home to was real. But his partner had been struggling in ways he did not fully see. She was dealing with depression. She had been overwhelmed with work and the relentless, unglamorous demands of caring for a toddler. The exhaustion of early parenthood has a way of hollowing people out slowly, and when that exhaustion is not met with connection, it can turn into a particular kind of loneliness that is hard to name out loud. And he has been honest about the fact that he was emotionally distant during that period. He acknowledges that he was not giving her the warmth and closeness she needed. He owns that part of this. And that kind of honesty from someone in so much pain is actually rare and worth recognizing. But here is where the story turns. Instead of bringing those problems to him, instead of fighting for their relationship or asking for what she needed, she opened Snapchat and started talking to a stranger. She arranged to meet him. She went to his apartment on a weekday morning while her partner was at work and her baby was in daycare. And whatever her intentions were walking through that door, whatever she told herself she was doing and why, what happened inside that apartment was, according to her, rape. She says that as she was leaving, getting her coat and shoes on, preparing to walk back out into an ordinary morning, he forced himself on her. A police report has been made. And I want to be very clear about this, because the person telling this story was also very clear. He does not blame her for being assaulted. If she was forced, that part was not her fault. What happened to her in that apartment is a crime and it should be treated as one. And her pain and trauma around that experience are real and they matter and they deserve to be taken seriously. But there is so much more to this story that he is also trying to carry at the same time. She did not tell him. She went home and she said nothing. She sat with something enormous and terrifying and she chose to carry it alone, or rather she chose to carry it away from him. She told her best friend instead. And he only found out later, not because she came to him, not because she decided he deserved the truth, but because the truth started unraveling on its own. And then he got chlamydia. So now he was not just dealing with the knowledge that she had secretly gone to another man's apartment. He was dealing with physical proof of what had happened, written in his own body, a fact delivered not by her voice but by a test result, something he had no choice but to confront whether he was ready to or not. Can we pause for a second? Because I want to make sure we are all absorbing what this man is carrying right now. He found out his partner secretly spoke to another man. She secretly went to his apartment. She was assaulted there. She hid it from him. He contracted an STI from her. He is now trying to support someone who was traumatized while simultaneously sitting with the fact that she betrayed him and lied to him and put his physical health at risk without telling him. That is not one thing. That is 5 separate crises happening inside one person at the same time. And there was more. He found videos of her dancing with another man at a club on a night she had told him she was only with her girlfriend. He found out she had brought two men to a private studio space connected to him after another night out and had lied about that too. So the Snapchat situation was not the only crack in the foundation. There were other moments, other evenings, other excuses, where she had been somewhere she claimed she was not, with people she had not mentioned, doing things she had not disclosed. And now every memory he had of a night she was out without him was under a microscope. Every casual text saying she got home safe. Every story she told the next morning over coffee. Every time she had looked him in the eye and let him believe something that was not entirely true. That feeling of not knowing what is real anymore, he named it exactly. And it is one of the most disorienting things a person can go through in a relationship. Because it is not just about the specific lies. It is about the discovery that the person you trusted most was capable of sustained deception. And once you know that, you start wondering what else you missed. What other nights? What other stories? What other versions of events were quietly revised before they reached you? The ground does not just shift. It disappears entirely, and you realize you were never standing on what you thought you were. He said something that I think deserves to be repeated slowly. He said he knew he would survive this someday, but right now he did not want to live through this phase. He was not saying he wanted to die. He was saying he wanted to be on the other side of the pain without having to walk through it first. And I think most people who have been through something this shattering know exactly what that feeling is. It is not hopelessness. It is exhaustion. It is the bone-deep heaviness of a grief that has not given you a single day off since it arrived. It is waking up and remembering, every single morning, before you have even fully opened your eyes. He is on sick leave from work. He just got promoted. He has a work trip coming up, and even a single day away from home is filling him with anxiety because he does not know what he can trust anymore. His nervous system is running on threat detection at all times, and it is destroying him from the inside. The pressure in his chest he mentioned is not a metaphor. That is what unresolved trauma and hypervigilance actually feel like in the body. That is cortisol and adrenaline doing damage they were never meant to do on a sustained basis. His body is responding to a wound that has not been allowed to close. Now here is where this story demands a real conversation, because it is genuinely one of the most complex situations I have ever read on this platform. He is trying to figure out whether to stay. He is thinking about their child. He is thinking about the love he still has for her, a love that does not vanish just because someone breaks your trust, which is one of the cruelest things about this kind of betrayal. He is watching her go to therapy and start medication. He is making changes in himself. He is approaching this with more self-awareness and more generosity than most people would be capable of in this situation. And he deserves an honest answer about what he is actually deciding between. Staying in this relationship is not impossible. People have rebuilt from worse. But it requires something very specific from her. Not just therapy and medication and new boundaries. It requires complete and voluntary honesty going forward, because the pattern here was sustained concealment. It requires her to understand that the individual events, the Snapchat conversations, the apartment, the club night, the studio incident, none of them happened in isolation. They happened because she was making repeated choices to hide entire parts of her life from him. And that pattern has to be genuinely confronted, not just managed. And he needs to be honest with himself about something too. There is a difference between staying because you believe in the relationship and staying because leaving feels impossible when there is a toddler and a shared life involved. Both of those can be true at the same time. But only one of them is a foundation you can actually build on. Staying out of love, out of genuine belief that this person can change and that the relationship is worth saving, that is a real choice. Staying because you cannot figure out the logistics of leaving is not a choice at all. It is just postponing the pain. He is asking the right questions. He is doing the work on himself. He is thinking about his child without using the child as an excuse to avoid his own needs. That is all genuinely admirable. But at the end of this, after all the therapy sessions and difficult conversations and slow rebuilding of daily life, the question he has to answer for himself is whether she is someone who kept secrets because she was struggling and scared and made a series of terrible decisions, or whether she is someone who will always find a way to have a life that exists outside of the one she shares with him. Only he can answer that. And only time will show him which one it is. Drop a comment telling me which of these stories hit you harder, because honestly both of them wrecked me. If this video got to you, leave a like and subscribe so you never miss one.